Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bringing you energy matters in an informal setting. It's been a year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war is still very much ongoing, with fierce battles, especially in the east of the country. Gas flows from Russia via the country have dwindled to a trickle. What is the likelihood of a complete stop? And what is happening to the country's energy system? And last but not least, how is the population coping? I'm Richard Sverrisson, and joining me this week to discuss the current situation in the Ukraine is Yuriy Onyshkiv of London Stock Exchange Group. A warm welcome to Yuriy, and a welcome back to the pod.
Thank you very much, Richard. Happy to be back.
Talk us through daily life in Kyiv, Yuriy. How are you coping?
I should say that the life in Kyiv has changed quite a bit through the last 12 months since the start of the invasion. And in the beginning of the invasion, we heard, a lot of gunfire, a lot of artillery fire because of the fighting on the outskirts of Kyiv. And, many who could, they have left Kyiv and then did not come back until maybe early summer, or even in a bit by now. In summer, there was very quiet and not many missile attacks on the city, although as you said, the fierce fighting have been going on in the east and in the south. But since the invading army has retreated away from Kyiv, so the summer in Kyiv was almost perfect, I would say. But things have changed since mid-autumn, when the missile strikes have been targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and this is when we started getting the power outages with, people being off the grid for days sometimes, including myself. There were the times when I, wasn't able to work for, 2-3 days in a row, simply because there was no electricity and no internet connection, and not frequently, but sometimes even no mobile signal. And I think by now, these attacks have not decreased, but they have had the regularity on these attacks on energy system. And I think last week it was like a 14th wave of this missile attacks on Ukrainian energy system since fall. So now I think, to wrap it up, we have adjusted a lot more compared to where we started, mainly because of the Western supply of this air defense, this complicated and sophisticated and very efficient air defense systems. Also, I think European countries have helped with some spare parts to repair some of the transmission lines and energy infrastructure in general. And also, I think the entire energy system has adapted to it. So, what we have now is we do still have some regular power outages, but they're very predictable, a lot more on schedule. And there was a lot of energy gymnastics has been done over the last several months to adapt to that. So by now, Kyiv is living its almost normal life, I should say. Although, the threat of any major outage or blackout even is imminent, because this is not over yet, clearly.
So it's a constant threat of airborne attacks, if you like.
Absolutely.
But how is daily life then? You say it's almost normal, and then the summer was perfect. But what's it been like in those sort of winter months? Are cafes, restaurants, pubs, cinemas, are they open?
Oh, this is all open. And now, even with power outages, they're operating because now they have adapted to being offline for a few hours during the day, and they have procured all of these generators, big and small. And then they're just switching to these generators when there's no electricity in the grid for them. I was just kind of jogging a couple of weeks ago in my neighborhood. And I hit another neighborhood that had a power outages. And as I ran, I heard a lot of noise from these buzzing generators on my way. And every other, restaurant in a neighborhood and a coffee shop and even a simple convenience store would have a generator running. And even in bigger supermarkets, they would have like a bigger generators running. So it's all operating. I mean, people keep calm and carry on. And this is very surprising. If we were told about what is going to happen, I mean, everybody's response would probably be that it would not be possible to live a comfortable life in Kyiv anymore. But if you're forced to adjust, then you can do pretty well actually, and not again without the assistance of the West that has been providing.
That's truly amazing, Yuriy, and it obviously shows and all credit to the power of resilience of the Ukrainian people there, I think. What is this? These generators, are they diesel fired? Would that be correct in assuming?
Diesel fired and gasoline fired, different capacities. So from very small ones that you would get in your cottage if you need to, or to like a much bigger ones that can power the entire large supermarket.
You mentioned, and we read a lot in the West about Russia targeting the infrastructure. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and what aspects of the infrastructure in particular, and in which parts of the country, Yuriy?
Well, they are targeting wherever they can reach, and where maybe there are some gaps in air defense. So they have been hitting by missiles throughout the country, wherever the army is not present. So which means maybe 80% of the country currently, or maybe 75% of the country that is not under Russian control. But that has started even with first weeks of invasion, because when the invasion started, they have captured some land, and they have now, for instance, since the very beginning, they are controlling the Zaporizhzhia power plant, which is now not producing any electricity. It is consuming some just to cool down the nuclear reactor, but it is not producing anything to the grid. And it's a major power plant. It's used to supply like 25% of power to Ukraine, and this is the largest power plant in Europe. Second, they also captured some thermal power plants, and I think one hydropower plant. So basically that removed about 14% of generation capacity from Ukraine, because they've effectively taken control of these power plants and put them to idle. So that was the first wave. But since the war advanced through the spring, the demand in those occupied areas has declined. And so that, in effect, kind of balanced itself out. These missile attacks are targeting not necessarily the power generators, but these numerous transmission lines, the transmission grids, and that basically cuts off the entire regions from power supply from these power plants. It is not only affecting Ukraine, but it is affecting also Moldova, because in the Soviet Union, when it was all set up, Moldova, if you look at just the power grid, it was set up in a way as a region of Ukraine, so to say. Of course, it's an independent state, but it operates as part of the Ukrainian grid. So whenever you had like a cutoff in the south of Ukraine, half of Moldova could be offline for several hours. So this is affecting them directly.
And how easy are they to repair once a transmission line gets hit in a bomb attack? How hard is that to fix?
There was a lot of resilience and there are a lot of heroism, not only on the front lines by Ukraine army, but also by these power engineers. I think they have done an incredible job, and they have been fixing these lines within hours and at the most within days. So I think one of the attacks with the most impact has taken place, I think, in November last year. And this is when parts of Ukraine have been offline for, 3-4 days. Some came online earlier, and some came later, about 3-4 days. So we are speaking about the time when about 30% of Ukrainian energy infrastructure has been hit and targeted and hit. So now, how do you return 30% in 3 days and 4 days? This is just incredible. Now it takes a lot less time because, again, we have been more efficient with knocking down some of these missiles, some of these kamikaze drones that have been flying into Ukraine airspace, and also about managing the entire system, so balancing out the demand as well, controlling the demand as well, maybe turning off some of the industrial capacity, some of the industrial consumption, and keep more for residential and so forth. Ukraine has also, with the start of this targeting of energy infrastructure, has stopped power exports to Europe, which it briefly did since the end of summer until early October, and that's when in early October we cut it off. We banned the exports because we needed it for our own needs. And now recently, Ukraine, some of the companies in Ukraine, namely DTEK, has started importing power from Europe through these power lines, mainly to supply some of the affiliated steel plants.
No, I mean, it's fascinating. And I think, those engineers working on those grids, I mean, they're doing a truly incredible job under very, very difficult circumstances, under unimaginable circumstances, it must be said. But how about the gas grid, Yuriy, in the Ukraine? Has that also been targeted by Russia?
Gas grid has not been targeted. So all the gas storages are underground. It's hard to target them. And we have not seen reports of targeting them. Also, the pipelines have mainly been untargeted. I'm speaking about the pipelines that run from Russia through Ukraine into Europe. However, some of the distribution lines have been hit in the early weeks of the invasion. And I think in the first month of invasion, Ukraine lost about 10% of its domestic gas output, because it is located mainly in the east of the country, and that's where some of the fighting has been going on. But when Ukraine army has successfully pushed out the Russians from these areas, they were able to recover the output. And sometimes it's because of the damaged infrastructure, and sometimes so the power output declined, not only because of the damaged infrastructure, but because it was impossible for the employees of these production companies to be located there and continue working safely. So when the Russians were pushed out of these regions, the gas production has recovered gradually over the summer.
No, I mean, it's very, very interesting. I think if we see the daily gas flows from Russia through Ukraine into Europe to Velko-Kapusani, they have remained, I mean, they've slowed down, they've come down to pretty much a trickle of what they were, but they're still 25 MCM a day, aren't they, around that kind of level. What are your expectations for the sort of months ahead? Could they come to a complete stop?
I think that they will come to complete stop, at least from the end of this Ukrainian and Russian transit agreement, when it runs out, I think at the end of 2024. And this also, again, depends on, how the war ends and when it ends, and what kind of, regime is in Russia, and what kind of appetite is there in Ukraine to prolong any transit agreement between Russia and Ukraine. But simply looking at the market fundamentals and whether Europe would need any Russian pipeline gas beyond that time, so after 2024, it's a big question now. We can see that the decrease in these flows through Ukraine have been falling mainly because of market fundamentals. So these countries in Europe are not nominating this vast amounts of gas. Of course, Russia started, I think, last year did not confirming some of the nominations for Italian companies, and they have complained about it because they have these long-term agreements that they relied on. But I think most recently, some of the recipients in Europe were simply not nominating large volumes. They were nominating less and less. And this is purely due to this arbitrage between the TTF front months and TTF spot. So they can, they're trying to balance out their portfolio by what's cheaper to take a Norwegian gas on the spot market or nominate Russian. And that's why we are seeing most recently in the past couple of months, the Russian flows are falling. So it's not likely that, this year with all of these LNG capacities growing in Europe, we'll be seeing more Russian gas, more pipeline Russian gas in Europe.
Yeah, so it's not really that's Russia screwing off the taps. It's morely the European buyers are saying, actually, we're going to other sources. Thank you very much. And but it's interesting that you say, Yuriy, that the flows could actually continue until the end of that transit agreement, because that's almost 2 years away, isn't it? So they could just become, slow right down.
I know drops of water dripping slowly from the tap, dripping into this European gas balance very slowly, and it's small volumes. You said 25 MCM per day now. If we recall, it used to be like 100 and about, and historically it was about maybe 140 and 170 MCM per day. So now we're speaking at very, very small oils. So in an event when it comes to zero, either by Europe just deciding to remove this Russian gas from its balance, or by Russian single-handedly shutting down this pipeline, I don't think it will affect the balance by much, and it might have some short-term effect on the prices, of course, because we'll send some short-term waves on the spot market, on the front months market. But I don't think that now, when Russian pipeline gas is accounting for about 3-4% of European pipeline imports, it will play much of a difference. So now it can easily be offset by some of the LNG flowing to Germany or Italy or Spain or elsewhere.
Of course, a separate question that that submerged quite a lot in Europe. Europe is under the impression, or some parts of Europe, that the worst of the winter is over. Now, I know that maybe the winter in the Ukraine can last a little longer than in some parts of other parts of Europe. But what's kind of, the talk here is of preparing for next winter. What's happening in the Ukraine, Yuriy? What are the challenges ahead in preparing for the winter 23-24?
Well, clearly, yes. In Europe, the weather has been very mild throughout most of the winter. In Ukraine, it was pretty much the same dynamic. So I think we were just coincidentally very, very blessed to have a mild winter, because unlike in Europe, our storages were just half full when we entered into this winter, and we would be fine. But suddenly with all these missile attacks, we needed to burn gas for power, which we rarely do. So it is now gradually depleting a lot of stock. But the Naftogaz of Ukraine, this national company, is importing now a lot of gas, including from Norway. I imagine from the Baltic pipeline, and taking a lot of loans from the likes of EBRD to import all this gas, and is already kind of paving the way from the next heating season. Because this winter, it's almost over, and the forecast indicates that we are going to have slightly above a normal weather forecast. But next winter looks quite risky, because we might need to import about maybe 4 to 5 billion cubic meters through the summer. That could be a challenge, mainly financially, although not infrastructurally, because we have all this interconnectivity with the European Union, and we can there's ample capacity to pump all this gas into Ukrainian storages. So it has already been discussed, which is very reassuring, and we might be ending this winter at a very low level. Currently our storages are at about 30% fullness rate. Now compare it to Europe. In Europe, it's about 68% fullness currently, because European Union has stocked up very well ahead of this winter, and Ukraine didn't. And so moving into next heating season, we would need a lot of imports, definitely.
Yeah, but I hope some of that can come from Norway at least. But we'll see. Maybe some from LNG terminals in both in parts of Eastern Europe. But Yuriy, I'd like to sort of round off by asking you, about what Western European companies and countries can do to help in the current situation, both specifically, I mean, in terms of energy infrastructure and also maybe boosting the gas storage over the summer months and autumn.
Well, I think that the bigger picture is that this upside risk will remain as long as the war is going on. So I think ending it with Ukraine having the upper hand is, I think, key here.
Sorry to interrupt there, Yuriy, but in terms of the upside risk for prices, for gas prices in Europe, or
exactly, for prices and for supply security, and for the ability of the energy system to function properly. I think that kind of risk remain as long as the war is taking place, and it is very well taking place, although at a different part than it used to be when invasion started. So I think whatever can be done for Ukraine to prevail and put an end and have a very sustainable peace, that would be, I think, a major factor for any energy security, let alone generally geopolitical security in Ukraine and generally in Europe. But being more specific for energy, I think financial assistance will help for Ukraine to be able to import all of this gas and power and maybe procure some spare parts. I think also, again, providing Ukraine which was done a lot in the past, providing Ukraine with all of these spare parts and equipment to be able to repair some of the power lines and transmission lines. So it would be really, really helpful. And I think, but I'm jumping ahead of myself, and this has already been discussed in Ukraine, that in the long term, Ukraine would like to kind of very much change the way it is set up, the energy infrastructure, to be more resilient. They even discussed about putting the power lines underground. I don't think this is going to happen. It's very expensive, but this is like a scenario of basically a nuclear war. And of course, this is not on the table, but I think there's a lot of work to be done by Ukraine. And I think that, kind of European state-of-the-art equipment and kind of assistance in managing the system would really, really help.
Perfect, Yuriy. Well, thank you very much for being on the Montel Weekly Podcast this week, and all the best to you and your family in Kyiv.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Hello, listeners. Since we recorded this episode, we also heard from Ukrainian utility DTEK, who said they were available to appear on the podcast. I spoke to Dmytro Sakharuk, Executive Director of DTEK. Hi, Dmytro. A warm welcome to you, and thanks for finding the time to speak to us.
Hello to everybody. Thanks for having me with you today.
So before we start, Dmytro, could you tell us a little about your position at DTEK? What do you do?
I'm Executive Director of DTEK. It's HQ, DTEK LLC. In DTEK, we have 4 businesses. One is responsible for coal mining and thermal generation. Second one is for gas production, natural gas production. The third one is for renewables, so wind and solar farms. The fourth is the energy retail, called D-Solution. And then D-Trading is the wholesale trading, and also have grids. It's a regional company that transmits electricity in certain regions of Ukraine. And we have a HQ that basically manage those 6 businesses, and I'm working in the HQ as executive director.
Excellent. This week has seen the visit of Joe Biden to Ukraine and into Kyiv. Has that boosted morale in the country, Dmytro?
I think so. It was a unexpected visit, I would say, because nobody expected that he would come, and his schedule was about Poland, not about Ukraine. And unexpectedly, he arrived to Ukraine, and I think yes, it definitely boosted morale. It showed support by the states to the Ukrainian struggle for freedom, and definitely that was evidence that the states will continue providing us such necessary help to fight Russian aggression.
Tell us about the situation at your company, Dmytro. What are your priorities at the moment?
We are the biggest energy company. We run 6 thermal power plants that basically provide very important role in the energy system. We provide the not only the base load, we also provide the maneuvering capacities for the morning and evening peaks. For that, we definitely produce coal that is used to burn to burn and to produce electricity. Since October last year, Russia started very aggressively to trying to destroy the energy infrastructure of Ukraine, trying to turn us out. And basically, they started with attacks to the substations, big substations, to stop distribution of energy throughout Ukraine. Later in December, I guess, yes, they started attacks to the generation facilities, thermal power plants, hydro plants. Our plants, for example, 6 of our plants were attacked 28 times. Some of them 3-4 times, and Russians unfortunately used a very massive number of missiles. Some of our plants, for example, were hit during the one attack by eight missiles at the same time. They also used a combination of missiles and drones. Some of the plants were attacked firstly with drones, then 1 hour later missiles arrived. Unfortunately, 3 people were killed, more than 20 were severely injured, the workers on the plants. So it's a very expensive price we're paying for the keeping lights in Ukrainian houses. So right now, our priority is pretty obvious: to keep our plants running. After the attacks, of course, we need to do a lot of repairs because it's a huge devastations caused by the missiles. So I understand that the plants are not designed to sustain attacks of the rockets or missiles. So those attacks provide a lot of damage that we need to repair. So the first priority is to repair what we could repair. If we take all fleet of thermal generation plants in Ukraine, it's about 10 gigawatts. 7.5 gigawatts of thermal plants are damaged or completely destroyed. I would say up to a gigawatt is completely destroyed. Completely destroyed meaning it will take more than a year to repair. Basically, we will need to rebuild part of the units. The remaining units can be restored, can be repaired. For that, of course, we need a lot of equipment, a lot of resources to buy equipment. It's pretty expensive. We're talking about millions of hundreds of millions of dollars that we need to spend for the repairing, because it's a big pieces of equipment like big transformers, turbines, generators, premises, because what Russians started doing in December, they started just hitting the buildings of the plants. causing a big, so if there are no roofs, for example, in many plants, roofs are absent. This is causing a lot of problems right now in winter because it's a -10, -12 right now outside of the plant, and you've got to understand that it's very difficult to operate the plants under such low temperatures because all liquids are freezing. So our priority to keep running because it's probably the only choice we have. We need to just keep doing our job in order to have to provide lights to Ukrainian houses, offices, and of course to the industries, because industry produce a lot of necessary things for the economy and for the military sphere.
Absolutely. I mean, the situation you describe is quite horrific there, Dmytro. Where are these power plants and these substations located? Are they across the whole country, or more maybe in the eastern or southern parts of Ukraine?
They're located in all regions of Ukraine. So basically, our plants, two of them located in the western part, very close to the Polish and Hungarian borders. One plant is located just in the center, and the remaining are closer to the east. Substations, big substations that are operated by the national grid operator called Ukrenergo. They are all located in all regions of Ukraine. There are more than 50 big substations that were damaged or totally destroyed. Some of them totally destroyed by the attacks. You understand there is no a safe place in the territory of Ukraine. Even Moldovan territory hit by the rockets. So since they can launch those rockets, missiles, and from outside of Ukraine, and they can hit any place on Ukrainian territory, all facilities, with no exceptions, where they're located, were damaged. And basically, they repeated their attacks. So they launched the first wave, then they see the damage, they estimate the damage, consider what should be targeted next, the next wave, and there again assessment of the damage, the next wave. So it's a pretty professional job they are doing. Definitely, they advised the military, Russian military, are advised by the specialists from the energy sector, because they definitely know what substations, for example, are crucial for keeping the energy system together. As a united system. Definitely they know what plants are important and what particular place the rocket or missile should arrive, or drones should arrive. So basically they provide very specific coordinates, because a plant, it's a huge territory. It's 300 hectares. The usual big substation is like 50 hectares square. So it's a big facilities, and if you don't know exactly where you need to hit, you could spend a lot of missiles on drones with no effective result. So definitely they get the advice, they get the coordinates, and they unfortunately cause a lot of very specific damage that is very difficult to repair afterwards.
Tell us a little bit about the repair work. How you managed to keep the electricity on, I mean, the grid running largely. I mean, there are certainly, we hear stories of blackouts in Kyiv and in other parts of Ukraine. How long does it take to repair a substation? And I presume if some of these power plants don't have roofs on or are severely destroyed, maybe they are, some of them are still offline. Is that the case, Dmytro?
More or less the same. More or less, yes. So basically how it usually happens, Russian start their attack. People go to the shelter and wait until the attack is over. Of course, the Ukrainian military trying to hit those missiles down using the anti-missiles system, so air protection system, basically. But not all of them can be hit down. Approximately 80%, from 50 to 80%, this is the success rate of our air system, because it's not sufficient number of units. The territory of Ukraine is huge, and the number of units is not sufficient. plus Russians using a very high-speed missiles. Some of them, like X-22, the speed is 4,000 kilometers per hour, so it's huge speed. It's impossible to hit using the old or Soviet Union kind of designed systems. The modern system, I mean, like Patriot, for example, or Iris, it's a French system, or French system that is promised to be delivered. So basically, because of the insufficient number of the air protection systems, 20, 25, 30% of the missiles, so they hit the target. So when they arrived, they arrived to the several locations that mentioned. So they arrived to the switch yards. It's basically the area near the buildings of the plant where a lot of transformers are located. Basically, it's used to connect plants to the grid. So the initial idea was to destroy those switch yards. Transformers, it's a big tank filled with oil in order to use to cool the transformer. And of course, when the rocket arrives, oil is quickly burned out, and it's possible to extinguish it. You can only cut the fire from other equipment, but in essence, you just wait and wait until the whole oil is burnt out. So after that, transformer is not usable. It's just you need to throw it away and build and bring a new one. And the unit transformers or the connection transformers are the big pieces of equipment, like a 2-3 story building. So it's a pretty huge one and expensive, and design according to the specific technical specifications per order. So it's just impossible to go to somewhere to the supermarket and say, hey, I need a 130 kilovolt transformer. You need an order. You need to order, and it takes usually from 8, 12 of 18 months to produce that transformer, because what the producer is doing, like Alstom, Hitachi, Siemens, and some local producers, they basically take the specification, then procure the spare parts or components for that, and assemble, according to the specification, assemble the particular transformer. There are some kind of technicalities in this area. First of all, we could not use a lot of European equipment because we have different type of voltage level. For example, Europe, it's 400 and then goes down 200 kilovolt. In Ukraine, it's a different thing. 750, 330, 110, and lower. American or Canadian equipment, they have a different frequency. In Ukraine, we have as in Europe 50 Hz, in the States and Canada 60 Hz. So that also creates some difficulties finding the equipment that we can use. So what we can do if, for example, in the system operator substation is damaged, basically the transformer, or in our plant transformer is damaged, we can use our resources, so our warehouse that we used first. So we used the reserves transformers. We had some. Then we can basically repair some of the transformers which were not burned but just damaged by the rockets. We can definitely to try to repair them. And of course we can use the units, the equipment from those units that are severely damaged. Basically use them as a donors. Transfer the equipment from those that we know will not be online in the next 3, 6, 9 months. As we can definitely borrow a transformer, for example, or a generator or a turbine for the unit that will can be ready in advance more quicker. So basically, we try to collect the equipment. So then people, the workers, start to repair, and depending on the damage, it takes a week, 2 weeks, months to assemble the pieces together. Of course, we don't care right now for roofs or walls, because it's impossible to do that at the same time because number of people is limited. Yes, we're trying to make sure that the machinery is running, start the unit in order to provide energy into the system. This is the traditional way. And since the Russians did their attacks every 2 weeks, you can imagine that the number of units that were offline was huge. As I said, 10 gigawatts of thermal plant, for example, units of thermal plants were out of the grid. That's created a deficit in the system. And the only way how the system operator was able to balance the consumption and the generation is just lowering the consumption by this rolling blackouts throughout Ukraine. So basically every region got the limits per every hour, and the regional distribution companies was tasked to basically limit consumption. So there was a rolling blackouts. Let's say all consumer base was split into 3 groups, and one group out of 3 was disconnected just to lower the consumption, and two remaining were heading and getting power, and then rotating during the day and during the day and night.
So that's astonishing, the bravery of the workers then as well, who have to repair these buildings, these substations, the power plants in light of these missile attacks, Dmytro. What about other energy production, for example, coal production or gas production? Has that continued in the Ukraine?
Roughly, Ukraine produced 20 million ton of raw coal per year. DTEK produced 16.5 out of those 20. The remaining is produced by the state-owned mines and some smaller private producers. We continue producing coal in Ukraine. There are some difficulties with the production in the east of Ukraine because the traditionally and geographically mines were concentrated in the east and in Donetsk and Lugansk Oblast. Of course, those mines that were allocated in the Lugansk Oblast, which is currently occupied or have been occupied by the Russians, they don't produce coal, and the production facilities of mines that are located close to the borderline, the front line, they work with some problems, some interruptions because of the unstable power supply, the railway connections, just a lack of people because people are trying to move westward, just trying to avoid being killed or injured. So that's area which is close to the front line is not so a reliable supply of coal. Not big volumes of coal produced in that area, mainly in the central part of Ukraine. We have some big deposits operated by us, but still they are important part of this coal supply. Regarding the gas, we have one big producer in Ukraine. It's Naftogaz. It's state-owned company, and they have a production facility company called Ukrgaz Видобування. They produce gas, 18 billion cubic meters per year. This is the biggest producer. DTEK, we are the largest private producer, and we produce 2 billion cubic meters per year. Basically, the production areas are in the west or in the let's say the central part of Ukraine. Some of the production facilities which are closer again to the east were damaged and suspended their production, but the main volume is still being produced, and it's not sufficient, of course, to cover the Ukrainian need per year. We need to import coal or gas from outside of Ukraine, and we do that. But the main part, 75%, even 80% of gas needed by Ukraine, we produce locally so far. And we hope that we will continue doing that this year and afterwards.
Dmytro, a final question here. What can the West do to help the situation in Ukraine? I mean, you mentioned some, the technical assistance, some of the supplies. What concrete can, and obviously financial aid. What else can the West do to help the situation and the country's energy system?
First of all, which is the most important, the vital thing is to provide as many systems to protect facilities from the missiles as possible. That is a key, because we can repair, but if missiles continue arriving without being intercepted, definitely this is a kind of monkey job we do, and they destroy even a new equipment that we install. So first of all, that is a reliable protection of skies. And this is important and a key thing that we need to arrange. Otherwise, there will be no exit from that situation. The second, as I mentioned, is repairing of the damaged facilities. For that, we definitely, as a system, as a country, and as the energy companies, state-owned or private-owned, doesn't matter, we definitely need resources to cover procurement of the equipment and procurement of the equipment itself. Because as I said, we need at the same time a lot of equipment. Usually before the war, 50 transformers never were produced during 1 year, just big volume. So here we need a concentration of resources as a financial aid, maybe long-term loan facilities with some extension of payments of interest a bit later, for example, and a concentration of production facilities because we have already exhausted all used equipment. We contacted, first thing that we did, we contacted all our partners outside of Ukraine, in Europe, in America, in Canada, and asked, do you have a used equipment that we can just borrow from you or buy cheap, or you can provide it for free? And by the year end, we just exhausted all those used equipment. Right now, we need a new production of new pieces of equipment, transformers, substations, like circuit breakers, disconnectors, and other with smaller pieces, but still they should be produced as a new. And here, the help should be first provided assistance with the financial resource, and then the second, it's just production itself. It's a priority supply, maybe to arrange some additional facilities and also capacities in order to produce those equipment. And those two, development or improvement of the anti-missile protection systems and providing the resources for the production of the equipment that was damaged, can definitely help to prepare for the next winter. Because we have like 5 days to the end of this winter, but this will be the first day when we start preparing for the next one.
Dmytro, I hope very much that you get all the assistance you need in both those instances. And thank you very much for joining the Montel weekly podcast this week. I hear there's a bomb alert now, a siren in the background there, Dmytro. So thank you very much for joining us and finding the time. It's much appreciated.
1 second, this is the air raid signal. It should be...
Увага! Повітряна тривога. Пройдіть найближче укриття.
Yeah, we need to finish our call because we need to go to the shelter.
Dmytro, thank you very much, and all the best to you and DTEK and your family. Thank you.
Thank you, bye-bye.